Well, this one feels personal. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, then please do me a favour and hit that subscribe button. So, first things first, apologies, I do not have a guest this week. Hopefully, this will be the only time this season where I do not get a guest for the preview for each game, unless it's the next Ravens game, because for some reason, Ravens fans don't seem to be too keen to come on and talk about this game. I'll be honest, I don't know too many Ravens fans. Either they don't have that many fans, or Twitter seems to intentionally keep me away from them. But even the ones I do know, I've sent some messages out all week, been trying to get some Ravens fans on for about a few weeks now, and not got any good responses or anyone wanting to come on. So as I said, maybe they're ducking it. Maybe they feel a little bit nervous about this one. Don't want to get too confident. So just me for this one. But as I said, hopefully the only time this year, because, conversations I have with other fans seem to go a little bit better, and they seem to be more willing to talk about the game more than Ravens fans. But I digress. This game is obviously, we don't need any extra motivation to want to go and beat the Baltimore Ravens. We all know the history of these two teams. But even with that said, I think we have gotten even extra motivation for this game with, of course, the Baltimore Ravens celebrating 30 years since Art Modell stole the team from Cleveland and moved it to Baltimore. They are having their 30th anniversary for this game. Are Browns fans being a bit petty with this? Maybe, but I don't care. Could they have known that the Browns were going to be their first, the first home game of the season? They say that they've had this plan for over a year. That was always going to be the first home game. They only had a 1 in 9 chance of it being the Browns, so it's not like, they obviously knew there was a chance this was going to happen. So I don't think they can play entirely innocent with that. But even with that being said, once they knew it was the Browns, their next home game is a Monday Night Football game with the whole nation's eyes on them. That would have been a good time to do it, but no, they decided to do it when the Browns are in town. The team that was stolen away for them to become a team. There is of course going to be extra motivation for us fans. Will there be for the players? I don't know. Most of them players, like myself, we weren't born in 95 when the team was taken away. So, and obviously not every player that plays for the Browns is from Cleveland. So, you can't expect all of these guys to be aware of this, but I'm sure that the team has got to make them aware. They're going to know how much this means to the fan base. Anyone who plays for the Browns already knows how much it means to the fan base to beat those other AFC North teams. Especially the Steelers. Well, I say especially the Steelers. Especially the Steelers, but the Ravens as well. So whether or not they know about the history, I'm sure they're going to be made aware of just how much Browns fans want this game, want to win this game. Some of the players have been sending shots, which some people might not like. I can joke and say maybe don't poke the bear, but fuck it, It's a competition. What are these guys supposed to say? Oh yeah, Derrick Henry's actually really good, and we're going to struggle against him, and all of this stuff. Of course, you're not going to say that. You're going to be confident in yourself. Jerry Jeudy saying that the secondary provides no problems for him. Talk your shit, Jerry. Grant Delpit saying that it's not hard to tackle Derrick Henry, which we all know is a lie. It is very hard to tackle Derrick Henry. But with that being said, Grant Delpit got a great little highlight reel, knocking over Derrick Henry last year. And I think in 7 games against the Cleveland Browns, Derrick Henry has actually only gone for over 100 yards once. And that was a game where the Browns, we were 3-13 and were tanking. We didn't want to win that game. So I think they let him have most of those yards. The Browns have actually played Derrick Henry pretty well, in all the times they've gone up against him. But you can say don't poke the bear, of course, but in the end of the day, I like the competitive juice. This is a game that, as I said, we don't normally need any extra motivation to win one of these games, but this is even more extra motivation with them celebrating the 30th anniversary. I want our players to be as up for it as they can. I mean, Derrick Henry, of course, responded to it, made a comment about one of our coaches having a quote, which is just bullshit. You can go and watch what all of the coaches have said, and none of them have called out or made any comment that could be interpreted as a kind of shot at Derrick Henry. So I'm not entirely sure what he's on about there, but I would not be surprised if there is a fight in this game. These players hate each other anyway, in the sense of on the field. Ravens games under this regime have been pretty feisty already. With just the extra motivation, the comments that have been made, I would not be surprised if there is a fight in this game. Wouldn't be surprised if that fight even happens in the pre-game. But I will say that if the Browns can win this game, I will happily send $5 towards any player's fine for starting a fight or getting ejected in this game. The Browns are, of course, underdogs in this game. I think they're like 11.5 point underdogs. Going into Baltimore, the Ravens are, of course, still 0-1 as well, the same as the Browns, but they're a bit of a different 0-1, shall we say, pardon me, with them obviously coming off that loss to the Bills. So everyone is expecting the Ravens to win this. All of the national media are expecting the Ravens to win this. Everyone on the NFL team have picked the Ravens in the picks that they do. And a lot of, as I said, probably a lot of Browns fans are expecting the Ravens to win this. But in the end of the day, it's the NFL any given Sunday. And especially in this matchup, I do believe that the Browns can win this game. And I'm not just saying that because I'm here as a Browns fan. You look at the last 2 years against the Ravens, who, if we're being honest, have essentially been a super team. They have dominated pretty much the rest of the NFL over the last 2 years, which obviously includes a AFC Championship game appearance, MVP awards. They've essentially been a super team the last 2 years, whilst the Browns are not been a super team the last 2 years, shall we say. Yet the Browns have still split with them the last 2 years. And even when you look at the games that the Browns lost in those last 2 years, one of them was, of course, as I mentioned, the last game of last season, where the Browns had absolutely zero reason to win that game. They were tanking. They basically allowed the Ravens to win that game. And then the year before, the only game, the one game that they won against the Browns was the DTR game, where DTR came in being told that he was starting, the night before. And obviously, not expecting much out of a guy making his NFL debut, a fifth-round pick rookie, who was told literally 24 hours before that he was starting and had to learn the entire game plan in 24 hours. Outside of that, when they've actually been competing, shall we say, when the Browns haven't been tanking or haven't been throwing a rookie out there on 24-hour notice. Last year, beat the Ravens with Jameis Winston going for over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, obviously 29 to 24 in that game. And then the year before, the Deshaun Watson game, the comeback against the Ravens in Baltimore, which, Greg Newsome got the pick at the end to potentially tie it. Dustin Hopkins misses the extra point. We then still able to get the ball back, go down. Dustin Hopkins redeems himself with the made field goal to win that game. So, when you look at the last few, games between these two teams, as I mentioned, when they've both been on a level playing field, when they've both been trying to win the game, shall we say, the Browns have won both those games. So, you can't sit here and tell me that the Browns have absolutely no chance in this game when that's been the case. The 2023, yes, that was a better Browns team. You could argue one that obviously went to the playoffs, but even last year, that was a 1-6 Browns team. A Browns team that had pretty much already quit on the season, but they got motivated for that game and they were able to go and beat the Ravens. So I don't think there's any reason why any Browns fan shouldn't believe that the Browns can win this game. As I said, they played the Ravens well each of the last 2 years. I mean, under Kevin Stefanski, under this regime, the Browns have been so much better against the AFC North just as a whole. You go look at our record against those AFC North teams under Stefanski versus the 20 years before. It's just night and day improvement. We've played the AFC North pretty well. Even those bad years, we still went 3-3 against the division, or 2-4 against the division last year, which was 2 of our 3 wins were against the AFC North, one of the toughest divisions in the NFL. So there's no reason why the Browns can't go and win this game. How are they going to go and win this game? What is it going to look like? Talking about obviously the offense, Joe Flacco is making his return to Baltimore, of course, the team that drafted him, the team that he won a Super Bowl with. He is returning for the first time since 2018, since they moved on from him for Lamar Jackson. Of course, we've spoken about it on this channel. He's been all over the shop, Denver, New York, here, Indianapolis for the Colts. So, but in none of those spots has he actually played the Ravens or was the starting quarterback when those teams played the Ravens. So this is his first time going back to Baltimore, as I said, since they moved on from him. And, you go back to 2018, you go back to the subsequent couple of years after that, you kind of look at the interviews that Joe Flacco done, listen to him talk about it. I think he did feel pretty grieved by, he did have grievances with how it ended in Baltimore. I think he felt like he was slightly hard done by, shall we say, with how they moved on from him. So Joe Flacco revenge game, of course. If he can go and beat the team that moved on from him with a team, 7 years later, that truly would be one hell of a story. We've seen this before, like the year after or a couple of years, but a guy to move on even at that time, they're moving on because of his age and they want to get younger. And then 7 years later, he's on another team and goes back and beats them. That truly would be an awesome story. So, of course, Joe Flacco, if he can get motivated in this game, if he can have a really good game, like a Jameis Winston had last year when he threw for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, then that's, of course, going to put this Browns offense in a good position. Quinshon Judkins, all week it's been Willie, won't he? Wednesday he was supposed to practice, then he wasn't at practice, and everyone was going, what is going on? Turns out he was having a meeting with the NFL. He did practice Thursday and Friday. He was originally listed as questionable for this game, but it has been reported, pretty much announced, that he is expected to play in this game. What will that look like? Of course, with 2 days practice after 3 months not being with the team, it's not going to look like a lot. He's certainly going to be limited in this game. I would be absolutely shocked if he got more than 10 carries. I would be genuinely shocked. But I do think even having him out there in a limited role will be good for us, of course, as fans. We get to see him out there. We get to evaluate him even in that shorter role. But I do just think it just brings more questions for the Ravens defense in terms of stopping that Browns running attack. So I do think it will improve the run game, and of course hopefully it improves the run game long term going forward. But it does start with the blocking up front. Last week wasn't great. The Browns had 48 rushing yards in that game, less than 3 yards per carry, I'm pretty sure. So it's Quinshon will make an impact, I'm sure, but in this game with him coming back just off 2 days, I don't think you can rely on that too much. The Browns just need to get this run game altogether improved, and that starts this week against the Ravens. The Bills absolutely diced up that Ravens secondary. We don't have Josh Allen, of course, but I do still think the Browns can be successful passing the ball against the Ravens. The Bengals, when in week 1, they sat in a lot of, 2 high safety shells, which, to be honest, teams are going to just keep doing against the Browns if they can't run the ball, which is why it is so important to get that run game going. We need to get the run game going. That's going to, of course, help Flacco. That is going to give him more space. That is going to give his receivers more space, less attention. They're not going to be able to just, have those two high safeties back there and just basically force the Browns to go short and keep everything in front of them. With being able to run the ball, the Browns should obviously, that commands more attention from the Ravens' run defense, and that gives more opportunities for, more explosive plays, more deep balls, and obviously just gives more space for Flacco to work with, which then, of course, becomes an extension of the play action with Joe Flacco, which is so important in this offense, and, makes those play actions just, again, play action when you can't run the ball is just, it looks silly at times. You can just tell the team knows what you're doing. So the most important thing is the Browns, establishing this run game in this game, because that, the entire offensive scheme is an extension from that run game. So that is the most important thing. Pardon me. Spread the ball around as well. The Browns have got, maybe not the most top-end talent, shall we say, in the receiver room, but they've got guys in there. Multiple guys contributed last week. The Bills have got, the Bills, when they played the Ravens, they got 4+ receptions from 5 different players. Keon Coleman had a pretty big game, so, can Judy have similar success against that Ravens secondary? Maybe Ced Tillman, obviously a more similar body type to a Keon Coleman, shall we say. Those corners, despite all the talk they had all off season, they didn't actually look that great overall. Jair Alexander got beat over the top quite a few times, which led to I think at least 2 pass interference penalties on him. Nate Wiggins, to be honest, was getting cooked in this game. The Browns should definitely look to get multiple matchups against him, whether that's Isaiah Bond, whether that's Ced Tillman. Try and get Harold Fanning matched up with him, and that it just really is a massive mismatch. So overall, if the Browns can get their run game going, as I said, that is the most important thing. But if they can do so, there is no reason they can't move the ball in this game. I don't think the Ravens' defense should be as feared as maybe we talked about in the off season. Will the Browns score 40 points? I highly doubt it. But hopefully the Browns defense won't give up 40 points like the Ravens did. So the Browns will be able to move the ball, I think, if they can get this run game going. But of course, 40 points is probably a bit too much to ask for. So that then obviously goes to the defense that need to stop this Ravens offense as much as they can. Not allow them to get 40 points in this game. Yes, they still lost, but we're not going to see the Browns scoring more than 40 points. So if this defense gives up 40 points, the Browns are going to lose this game. It of course starts up front, getting pressure on Lamar, making things as difficult for Lamar as you can. He is one of those quarterbacks that you just can't really plan for. He can just pull something out of his arse. If we're being completely honest, he could be perfect on a rep, and Lamar Jackson could still somehow beat you. He only threw the ball 19 times against the Bills, despite scoring 40 points. If the Browns are going to win this game, you're probably going to see more pass attempts from Lamar Jackson than that. You want Lamar Jackson throwing the ball 30 times, and that's not because I think that Lamar Jackson can't throw the ball. I'm not one of those people that is, Lamar Jackson can't throw the ball. He's not a quarterback. Lamar Jackson is very, very good at throwing the ball. So, of course, him throwing 30 times, you still need to be on top of your game. But what that means is that run game, which is, just being the absolute signature of the Ravens offense for what feels like forever, and especially in the Lamar Jackson era, that means that that's not working, and that, they've had to move away from that. Which of course is massive. It starts with stopping that Ravens rush attack. Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, Justice Hill, pretty terrifying, if we're being honest, to go up against any team. But as I mentioned at the start, the Browns have actually played Derrick Henry pretty well in his career. Only allowed him to have over 100 yards once, and that's a game that they were tanking. Derrick Henry had multiple big chunk plays against the Bills. Something that the Browns, of course, need to limit. You need to keep those carries to. You can't keep allowing the chunk plays in the run game, because then that just commands so much, and basically their offense can then just do whatever they want. It starts with stopping their run attack. The Browns' defensive line, the Browns' interior, they're going to have to be up for it in this game. Mike Hall is out for this game. He's not able to be back in time, which is a loss, but maybe not the biggest loss going up against the Ravens, with Mike Hall, of course, being more of that pass rush upside in the interior than a run stopper. You're going to have to obviously rely on guys like Shelby Harris, like Mason Graham, fucking Aiden Huntington hopefully can go in there. And then obviously with those linebackers as well, Carson Schwessinger are going to be so important in this game. The Browns, if they're smart, will have a spy on Lamar Jackson. Otherwise, he is going to just be able to pick up those yardage every time he wants, every third down. If you haven't got a spy on him, he's probably going to pick it up. So those Browns linebackers are going to have their work cut out for them as well. But from what we saw last week from the Browns defense, they held the Ravens to, I think, 2.8 yards per attempt in their run game. Chase Brown only had 43 yards. His longest run on the day was 8 yards. So if the Browns can, of course, as I said, keep this Ravens run check as they did against the Bengals, not allow any of those explosive runs from the Ravens, force the Ravens to have to pass the ball more, then you are going to have some success. And then, of course, when they are passing the ball more, the Browns secondary needs to step up against those receivers. Isaiah Likely is out for this game. So is Pat Ricard. So going back to their run game, that is a bit of a loss for them. That's two guys that they use in the blocking in a lot of their heavy sets, especially Pat Ricard, their fullback. So that should be a loss for them in their run game. But then obviously, in their passing game as well, as Isaiah Likely, someone that can, easily go off for 100 receiving yards in a game. We've seen it from him before. So for him to be out is, of course, a loss for them. Mark Andrews, still one of the better tight ends in the NFL. Have to try and do as good as a job against him as they can. I think he only actually had one catch in the game against the Bills for 5 yards. If you can keep Mark Andrews to one catch for 5 yards, you're going to have success. Zay Flowers is obviously their main receiving threat. DeAndre Hopkins as well, but he's more of that kind of, I think, red zone guy and kind of third down guy. Zay Flowers gets the most of those target shares. He had 143 yards against the Bills. So the Browns secondary, who were actually quite impressive against the Bengals. They did a really good job against those Bengals receivers. Those Bengals receivers are better than what the Ravens have to offer. Zay Flowers being a slightly more different type of receiver with, more of that kind of slot guy, underneath guy, but also twitchy and fast and explosive. Does a lot of his stuff in the screen game as well. So Browns secondary, of course, if they can play as well as they did last week, if the Browns defensive line can play as well as they did, if they can limit this Ravens rush attack, force them into more, third and long situations, more obvious passing situations, allow Myles Garrett to get those chances to get at Lamar Jackson and all those other guys across that defensive line, then the Browns can definitely have success against this Ravens team. I'm going to keep saying it. The Browns can win this game. There is no reason to believe that the Browns can't win this game, even despite the fact that they're 11 and 5 point underdogs, despite the fact that, the Ravens are essentially a super team, despite the fact, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, all of that stuff, none of that matters. The Browns defense, if they can play as well as they can, if the Browns offense can get that run game going, if Joe Flacco can have a good game, if they can have, a couple of those weapons, Harold Fannin, Njoku, Judy, a Sed Tillman, maybe a Jamari Thrash, whoever, Dylan Sampson in the receiving game out of the backfield, James Cook had a bit of success in those kind of swing passes and those kind of checkdowns out of the backfield. So Dylan Sampson will, of course, look to do the same. If they can do all of that, then the Browns will put themselves in a great position to go and win this game. I'll mention it again. Of the last 4 meetings against the Ravens, the Browns have won 2 of them. And the 2 games they lost, they were tanking. It was the last game of the season last year. And the other game, it was DTR's debut as a rookie on 24 hours notice. So when they've tried to win the game, they've won the game. So honestly, I'm not like I'm confident for this game. Obviously, it's still going to be very, very tough. The Ravens are 11.5 point favourites in this game for a reason. Probably 90% of NFL pundits picked this team to make the AFC Championship again this year. There is a reason for that. So, of course, I'm not saying this is going to be easy, but the Browns do have a chance to win this game. As I said, if they can play up to the level that, we know that they can. Of course, limit the bullshit, limit the missed kicks. They are going with Andre Schmidt again this week. As a young player, I'm assuming, people can kind of point to the other guys, San Francisco cut Jake Moody, but San Francisco cut Jake Moody not just because he missed in week 1 this week, but also missed 10 kicks last year. This was Andre Schmidt's first crack at it. So from that perspective, you can understand them giving him one more chance, which I would expect it to be one more chance. If he comes in and starts bricking kicks again this week, he'll be out. But if they can, as I said, if they can limit the bullshit, not be missing kicks, not be missing important kicks, turnovers, of course, limit the turnovers. The Browns have had success against Lamar Jackson turning the ball over. Last year I think they got 2 picks against him. 2 picks against him in the game where Deshaun Watson beat them. Of course, one of them being the Newsome pick at the end to get the Browns back in it. We all remember the 4 interceptions that he threw against us in one of those Baker Mayfield performances, shall we say, which the Ravens won. The Browns have had success getting turnovers against Lamar Jackson. We talked about it in the review of the last game. Whenever the Browns lose the turnover battle under Kevin Stefanski, they seem to lose the game. So of course, turnovers, limit the bullshit. Play as well as they can on defense. Get this run game improved. Get this run game going on offense, and obviously how much that can then contribute to the pass game as well. And the Browns have every chance to win this game, and I really hope they do. I, of course, want the Browns to win every single game, but as we all know, some games you have a little bit extra motivation for. Pittsburgh Steelers, doesn't matter how bad you are, if you beat them, you feel very good about that week. Ravens are pretty similar. I've always hated the Steelers more than the Ravens, but, it's been close. And with obviously everything with the 30th anniversary stuff that they've done, with the kind of comments that they've made the last few years as well. It's not just this year. Some of the stuff that John Harbaugh did, with the whole Watson stuff, making comments like his team, was a step above everyone else in the moral high ground. And their moral compass was right and everyone else was as wrong. And since then, all they've done is sign players with troubled backgrounds and just been, contradicted it. And, I just, fuck the Ravens, fuck the Ravens. Stole our team, being bitches about it, made comments about it. Chris Canty doing the whole, tiptoey stuff and why should we feel bad because, they actually took the team away when we weren't successful and they were able to win Super Bowls, just completely ignoring the, 3 AFC Championship game appearances in the 80s, completely ignoring the fact that the Browns went to the playoffs the year before, that they stole the team. That was basically the bones and the structure of the Browns team that you then went and won the Super Bowl with. I really want to win this one, guys. If you can't tell, my behaviour on Twitter, on social media, is probably going to be very funny to see if the Browns do win this game. I will be doing a lot of dancing, a lot of reactions to it from what we've seen from the Ravens, and with all the comments and of course the 30th anniversary. But I'm really excited for this one. Really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a much closer game than the media thinks. Will I be wrong? We'll have to wait and see. Let me know what you guys think. Do the Browns have a chance in this game? How confident are you feeling? Let me know in the comments. But That would do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you do enjoy my content, then please drop this video a like, hit that subscribe button. It's free, but it really, really helps out my channel. You can also check the links in the description to see where you can follow and interact with me on social media. As I always say, I'm trying to build a community of Cleveland Browns fans, and even if that means I only get to talk to one fan a day, I'm happy because I'm talking Browns football with the best fan base in the world. Thanks again for watching, guys. Have an amazing rest of the weekend. Enjoy this game as much as you can. Fuck the Ravens. Go Browns. Pardon my French.